role of the archetype in fostering personal fulfillment and spiritual maturity. So it's a real honor for me to introduce to you Carol Pearson, certainly who's done an awfully lot of work in this field and continues to do so today. Some of that work has been expressed in her latest book, Persephone Rising, Awakening the Hero Within, which actually received the Nautilus Award Gold Medal, as well as The Hero Within, Awakening the Heroes Within, as well as What Story Are You Living, and the Pearson Mar Archetype Indicator, which I think many of you have already visited in preparation for this lecture for the retreat coming up. So one interesting thing about Carol is that at the age of 65, she was, at the age of 65, she was the provost and become the president of the Pacific Graduate Institute. At 69, she received her doctorate in ministry, and she is certainly one who is experiencing the joys and the challenges of eldering. And so it's with a real pleasure that we welcome Carol this afternoon, and I'm glad her and Joy take it from here. Carol?
Thank you so much, Father Garrick. I am so glad to be here, and I appreciate the pictures that were on beforehand, because I had longed to go to your retreat center. It would have been so lovely, but I'm so glad that we can do this in the way that we can now. And it also made it possible for some people who wouldn't have been able to attend to be with us. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Joy, thank you for all of the work you've been doing to make this happen, and how confident I feel in our partnership as we move forward. I am delighted to be here. I know that some of you are just finishing a lecture series in which you've been considering many issues, among which was how you could be of service to the world. Some of you are just starting the Zoom workshop with me, and I'm very excited about that. And the lecture today is going to kind of have several parts to it. But first, before I get down to, here's what we're going to do. I'd like us to just take a moment to get settled. I know I got to get on early, so I got a little settled, but I know many of you just got here and we're probably busy. So I just ask you to move into a more contemplative moment, and I'd like you to just think about the cosmos, all of those galaxies and universes out there, and think about how enormous it is, and we don't even know how enormous it is. And the great mystery of divine energy and divine presence, capable of creating all of that, and capable of imbuing us right now where we're sitting with love and intelligence, and the ability to persevere, to grow, to evolve, to be everything that we are here to be. And while we're at it, can we take a moment to just appreciate Mother Earth, and as this little bitty part of that great cosmos, this little spinning round beautiful circle with all of nature that is so beautiful to us and so wonderful and nurturing, and creates everything that we have, that gives us everything that we have, that is physical. And to spend a minute being just grateful that we can be here together in spite of the pandemic, in spite of everything else that's going on in the world, that we are here, and we are here for a wonderful cause, to fulfill ourselves, to really think, how can I be filled, and how can I deepen my spiritual life? I'm also very aware that we just had two political conventions, and I'm not going to do anything political in any of this. I'd like us to just send love to all Americans. Whatever we are, the ones we agree with, the ones we don't agree with, the ones who are hurting, which is about everybody. And just take a moment to just send love to all the people in our nation, and particularly those who are experiencing floods and fires in our country. Thank you. So here I am. Here's what we're going to be doing in this time together. I'm going to be introducing you to 12 archetypes. What archetypes, according to Carl Jung, who came up with this idea, are universal characters, universal patterns, universal narratives that have been with people in all times and all places, irrespective of culture and time. And that my experience with them is that, and the ones that I'm working with, is that the particular ones I'm going to be introducing you to are related to how people survived from early times and how we can be fulfilled now. And that each one of them also connects us with a spiritual gift. And so I'll be talking about that. And now I have to warn you, I'm going to tell you about 12 archetypes. Now, don't gasp. It's not going to be awful. I'm going to be talking about 4, and then because awful, not because I wouldn't be wonderful, but awful because you would be sitting and right there on Zoom once again. Well, after every 4, in groups of 4, we're going to do a stretch meditation. And that'll also reinforce what you've just learned. And then after I've introduced all the 4, we will have groups and have a chance to talk with one another, reflect a bit, and then talk with one another, and then come back. Right now, on my screen, I can see you. At least the ones who are on my front screen. There may be others. So I have a question. You know, just before I start with this, I just checked about the COVID-19 virus in South Carolina, and it's not as bad as where I live. So I was wondering, I have been literally mainly at home since March. How many of you, and I can see the ones on the here, have been actually at home most of that time? Okay. How many of you have been, yeah, okay. So we've been having the same experience, a similar kind of experience. The other thing, I recognize the expanse of what it means, but you know, Father Garrick said that, you know, I took a new job when I was 65. Well, I'm now in my mid-70s. Mid-70s is different than the mid-60s. And I know the mid-80s is different than the 70s. And the mid-90s is different than all of the above. So this is a big expanse. I'm not going to ask you your ages because it would be, I don't know, an easy way to do that. And you may not, I don't know why you wouldn't want to tell me, but I'm not going to ask you anyway. But I am interested in, for the people I can see, how many of you are still have a job? Like you go, yeah, I'm not that you, okay, you still have a job, okay? Any of you essential workers that are out there, out and about? Okay, yeah. How many of you are retired? How many of you would tell me that you're actively retired? That is, you're active. Okay, you're all pretty active. You're learning and growing. I can see that. Thank you. That gives me a little bit of help. And then one more thing is that while I'm talking about the actual archetypes, there'll be a PowerPoint on. You know what that means? You can brush your hair. You can get up and stretch for a minute. You can write notes. In other words, I won't see you, and no one else will see you on this call. But after 4 archetypes, that might not be the case. But actually, it probably will be, because we'll probably leave the PowerPoint on. Okay, you got it? You all ready? Good, good, good. All right. Joy, good time now to have the PowerPoint? Yeah. Okay. This is this is from basically the publisher of the Pearson archetype indicator, which will tell you what archetypes are active in your life based on, of course, how you answer the questions. And there is, as many of you know, if you went to take it, it has its own website, Storywell. So, Joy, next, and I'll start doing this. Wait a minute, better do it this time. Yeah. And on that report, you get the first thing you'll get is 3 different archetypes that are most active in your life. And in the workshop that some of us are going together to do today, we're going to be talking in depth about results on the PMAI and the highest archetypes, meaning that they're more active than other archetypes in your life. And we're also going to be looking at lower level archetypes. That is, they're not as active, but they're active. And then the lowest one, which may not be, or you may be oblivious to. Now, I'm telling you this not because we're going to go into that at this at this lecture. I'm telling you that because all of these archetypes, as I mentioned before, are helpful. Were helpful in the evolution of human beings, and all of them are active in people in modern life. And they can be expressed at more or less mature ways, which means, and that different ones can actually, this isn't like a type theory that tells you who you are. What it does is tell you what's up for you now. So when I go through the 12 archetypes that I'm telling you about, every one of them is something that most likely is active in you now. You've lived a while and you've had time. There may be some that aren't, and that is not necessarily any kind of problem, but it's something to know. So we're going through 12 kind of ways of being that that may be helpful now. But I am also sharing this with you to say, this instrument is designed, again, not to type you, but to update you on where your energy is now. That is, what excites you? Yeah, have you ever had the experience where you think, I should be doing this or should be doing that, and you just sit there? Or you have to drag yourself out to do it? I know I have regularly. Well, and then there are other things you get a chance to do and you're just leaping up, or as best we can leap up these days. And, you know, and archetypes, when they're the most active in us, energize us to do things. So if we decide we want to do something, but then we find we don't do it, very often it's not supported by that kind of strong archetype. And so part of this work is about finding out what you're supposed to do now, by what actually you want to do now, assuming that you want to do it in a positive way. Next slide, Joy. Okay. Now, I guess I'll also want to start with why I talked about, I'm going to talk about all of these in terms of evolution, of a little bit of how they're connected to fulfillment today, downsides and spiritual gifts that they have. But I want to start a little bit with the evolution piece, because Carl Jung, who came up with he didn't talk about these archetypes, but he talked about archetypes, and he said, it's what people have instead of instincts. And one interpretation of the story of the fall that I have read once was, the fall for human beings was when we learned to think and have free will. And we had evolved to the case that we could do that. And the baby's brains got so big that labor was really hard. And we had to work in a different way. I mean, animals work, they run out and they go and they get food and they do all those things, but it's more instinctual. We know more now that some of them actually think, but it's more instinctual. So the evolutionary part is that these archetypes, instead of instincts, kind of trigger our ability to do certain kinds of things. And I not too long ago was reading something as if a dog was speaking and talking about getting up in the morning, and getting up in the morning in comparison to the dog's caregiver. You know, the caregiver gets up in the morning and gets up, gets some coffee or whatever, or juice, or takes a shower, brushes the teeth. If the women if they're going somewhere, slap on some makeup, get some clothes, get some food, make the food, and the dog just gets up. And I'm fine. Okay, what are we doing now? Where's breakfast? Well, for the ancients, it wasn't where's breakfast, because they had to get food. But what was different for really ancient people is they had to make everything. They weren't animals. They didn't have fur. They needed houses. They needed clothing. They needed regular food. Some, they needed tools. They needed baskets, etc. So that's where I'm getting from the evolutionary thing of looking at that part. And the idealist, in an earlier book that I wrote, was the innocent, because it was a more childlike version of that. But the idealist energy in any of us is full of optimism, the ability to dream, trust in life, trust in just positive psychology too, and tends to have a happy disposition, gets up in the morning like a little birdie singing. And it's, without that, the ancients could not have survived. They had to have some faith. They had to have some sense. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? There's no food that just shows up. What are we going to do? How are we going to live? Now in the modern world, it's not that different. We have all the comforts, and we have so many things around us that humans have made, and made our lives much easier. But nevertheless, there are all kinds of things that we also know about that mean that we could get into despair, we could give up, but the idealist part of us believes in life and believes in God, or believes in something, some kind of ideal. The downside is that idealists can believe too much, and they can believe conspiracy theories. They can be conned if it's too extreme. But as a spiritual experience, the idealist gives us faith and gives us the capacity to not only have faith as an idea, but to have faith as a way of living. And to stay true to that faith, and update it and as needed, and change it and grow in it, but nevertheless to have faith and to keep that faith. Next slide. Oh, I was going to say one other thing. In the pandemic, I think we all need, we need the idealist. We need to know it's going to be okay. And we need to have faith in ourselves and the divine together, that we can deal with the problems that, particularly the problems that humans have created, that we can do that. But also for those of us who are stuck at home at just the time, I know for me, this is just the time that I wanted to travel. It's faith that it'll be all right. What is happening is all right. Yeah, what is happening is part of growing and part of our lives, part of our deepening, and needs to happen. Realist. Well, the realist is the part of us that says, okay, everything, but you know, I got to eat, I got to do this. What's real in this world? What can I touch? What can I taste? What can I count on? Who do I believe? What do I believe is real? What do I believe is not real? And it's, if you think back in ancient times, they were looking at, what do I need to do to survive? It's real. I can't be off dreaming all the time and being positive. There's steps I need to take. And that's true in all of our lives. And I have a very close friend who is 91 and quite ill. And she got so sick that she was unable to get out of bed, and then was starting to learn to sit up by herself and then to stand, and then she got something else, and she's learning again to sit up by herself. And she's this amazing woman. She uses mindfulness to say, well, this is my reality. How can I live it? How can I live it? How can I be me in this situation? How can I make the most of every moment of it? And she does. It's very, very touching to me. The downside is that in many people's lives, if they get too realistic in terms of what they think is true, they can give in to pessimism, to cynicism. But the spiritual gift, in addition to that acceptance, a sense of acceptance of what is and making the best of it, is also empathy in terms of recognizing the pain of other people and empathizing with one's own pain and suffering and the feelings we have that are real, and not bypassing that suffering, but not wallowing in it, but not bypassing it either. And I think Pat's a good example to me when I'm frustrated by the limitations of what's real in my life right now with this pandemic is, okay, get a life, Carol. That's what's real. It's real, deal. And stop complaining, basically. Okay. Next slide. The warrior archetype also was very important early. We had the hunter, we had the hunter and also the warrior who would fight off, competing bands who were trying to take the territory, and very important towards survival. But in modern world, of course, ideally we'd stop being violent, in my view. But a lot of what it means in terms of fulfillment today is, one, the capacity to say no. The capacity, and I don't know about you, but for me, one of the things that happened as I got older is a lot of people had stereotypes about what I should want to be doing. At the time, I took the job to run a graduate school. One of my kids thought I was going to quit my job and take care of his kids. And I said no at that point. I just took a new job. Now my daughter asked me to help homeschool her children, and I said, sure, I can do that. But it's a different time. I could say yes or I could say no. The warrior is also the energy of ambition that is competitive, to decide what you want to do, to decide, okay, I'm going for this, I want to do this, I'm going for it. And it's also actually competing in the world today, and it's fighting for one's principles, whatever you believe in, and actually taking a stand. All of that is a warrior, very busy archetype. It's also a dominant archetype in our culture right now, which is why we fight. We're always fighting all the time, because we like fighting. The downside is it can be ruthless, cruel. It's like the warrior starts with war, and it can be using information as propaganda. So every one of these has a downside, but the downside is really its more primitive, undeveloped side. And the upsides are what we want to grow into, and what anybody can grow into. That if they have the downside, they could have the upside. As a spiritual gift, the warrior the warrior can be fighting for what's right in an external way, but it's more internal. It's the ability that we begin to have to fight our own lesser desires, to be true to what we believe, to not make excuses for ourselves, to have discipline, and to keep, if we've made pledges to follow certain paths or practices or laws, that we keep them. And it's a very, very important part of spiritual life. And for us I think in doing service right now, some of it, if you've been signing up to do service or thinking about how to do service in the world, some of it is warrior work. And some of it is caregiver work, which is the next slide. Everybody knows the caregiver. You knew the warrior too, but I'm telling it to you in a different way, I hope. How would the ancients have survived without caregivers? We know that one of the ways that Homo sapiens were the humanoid kind of early person that survived was because there's signs that they took care of people when they were ill. They could see it from the bones that somebody had been very sick and clearly survived and was cared for. And it's the caregiver, if you think about all the care that's required in human life, the caring for children, the caring for the ill, the caring for the elderly, daily caring for one another, caring for homes, getting people fed, getting people clothed, caring in the larger world about other people that need help. It's one of my pet peeves is that very often the caregiver archetype is not loved and appreciated as much as the warrior archetype in our culture. But it's charity, it's bringing a casserole, it's sitting with somebody in their pain, and without it we still would not survive as a species. That is still true. The caregiver has a downside also. The downside is, one, there's a tendency to so deplete oneself by always giving, always being the one to take care of everything, and there's never any end to what needs to be cared for, that we're martyred. And the other is a tendency to keep other people dependent on us and to fill our particularly the children sometimes, but to keep people close to us by their need for us. It could be a serious downside. But mainly, it seems to me one of the most heroic archetypes in this system. And I wish it were appreciated at the level that it should be. I would suggest, I would imagine that those of you on this particular Zoom event do not undervalue the caregiver. So as a spiritual gift, it is loving service. It is coming from the heart. It is living in a way that is coming from the heart and responding to people with that kind of love. And not just feeling love, but acting on feeling love, doing something, helping. And as though as we grow older, the challenge is, the challenge in that is if we've been spending our lives as caregivers, is to be comfortable being on the other end of it, to be receiving. And in every part of life, it's the balance, the challenge is the balance of taking care of ourselves and taking care of others, so that we are not depleted in the process. Well, having said that, would you like a stretch break? Yes? Okay, I can't see you, so, but I looked at Father Garrick and he smiled, so I think we're okay. Let's take a stretch break. I'm actually, because I'm leaning forward to speak in the where my speaker can hear me, the mic can hear me, I'm not going to do it. And you could sit, feel free to keep sitting if you want to, if you feel like leaping up, and that's an easy thing to do for you. You could stand and really stretch in a big way. And I suggest that you just start by getting in the position you want to be, beginning to stretch your arms, stretch your legs even if you're in a chair. So just get your body moving. And just take that time. It's also just a time, and the Zoom is a little hard on the eyes, so it's good to move your eyes around. Look up, look down, or look around. Okay. Now, while you're stretching, or in your stretch, I'd like you to do some exaggerated movements. So if we think about idealists, what I'd like you to do is have an exaggerated movement in your stretching about what it's like when you feel really trusting full of faith and trust and openness to the future, openness to spiritual growth, openness to other people, knowing the future is going to be wonderful, and just just move into that delight in your body. And then let's move to realist. Then move to touching something real, something tangible, something, and then just spend a moment thinking, what do I look like when I'm thinking I've got to be real about this moment, and exaggerate it and utilize your muscles. And then stretch a little bit. Just open up, relax, flexibility. Take a moment then with warrior. Okay. This is going to be just take a moment to remember a moment either that you've done this or you need to do this coming up, which is to say an emphatic no. however you would say an emphatic no. You know, there are lots of different ways. Some people stamp their feet. Stamping your foot would be good. No. And then, because the other part is the hunter, how about want it? I want it. And some kind of gesture about reaching for what you want. You grab it. So then we have caregiver. Caregiver, I would suggest that what you do is still stretch a little bit, because we're about to have another 4 archetypes, that you think about, you were looking at somebody who you really want them to know how much you care. And as you really want to know them to know how much you care, you're trying to show it with your facial expression and your body. Yes, you know, I care. Okay, time to sit down. And we are going to move on to 4 more archetypes. The seeker. The seeker archetype is in, I'm going to start not with evolution, but with our time now, our time now, where very often the seeker starts with a sense of feeling a little stuck, or like, I'm tired of this, I don't want this anymore. I've felt this quite a bit with the having to be home for the pandemic. Can this be over? But the seeker's response is not just what I was doing, which is complaining. The seeker's response is, I know there's somewhere better. I know there's something better. And it is, the desire then is to leave where you are and go somewhere else. That somewhere else that would be, oh, so perfect. And just to tap into the evolutionary part, it was that, in that sense of trying to fully find the place that works for you, find the place that works for me now. That was the beginning of the of individualism and people specializing in their tasks that human beings are very good at doing, and much different than the animal world. And we, so we do this, that, and the other, but also in the ancient times, if an area was started to be overgrazed, overhunted, there was invading other people, it was the seeker that would say, we have to leave, and we have to have the courage to face whatever's out there. We don't know. We don't know what's out there. We have the same, we know more about what's out there because we have the internet to check it out. When we go somewhere, we can usually find out about the hotels and how, the trains and the planes and things like that. But nevertheless, we still have that yearning often for something better, something different, something more authentic, to be our lot, and that if I were only there, I would be more myself. And it's as a spiritual gift, it really is about the spirituality of finding our vocation, finding out who we really are, finding out what we want, and in a sense, who we are and what we want. And I don't mean to do television, I mean really what we want, deeply yearn for, is how we begin to evolve and change. And that for, in these times when we're older anyway, but also with the pandemic, what that means is that seeking isn't geographical. It's inside. It's an inner kind of seeking. And it's something that can be promoted also by prayer. And meditation is all of these of saying, help me know what is mine to do. And the incredible importance of that kind of seeking. And in that way, we can have inner pilgrimages, if not outer ones, these days. Okay. Next slide. The lover archetype is, any of these archetypes can be infused with love, but caregiver and lover are the two that we think of the most with that. And the lover's love is different than the caregiver's love. Is I'm helping you usually, but the lover is about just loving being with somebody. It's about, it can be about romance, it can be about friendship, it can be emotional intimacy between people that work together or that are together in any kind of way. And the lover can also be a guide, the kind of inner GPS that helps us make choices based on what we love and what calls to us, and we say yes. And in that way, with our work and with our relationships with other people, it's about commitment. And it's actually saying, well, the seeker is almost always saying, I want to keep finding myself and looking forward. By the way, the downside of that, it's all about me. The lover is all about, I will commit to this. I will commit to this path, this spiritual path. This work, this person, these friends, this place. And it is another way that we find ourselves, separate from the seeker's way to find ourselves. There's a downside to it in that, to all of them, but the downside on this one is that we can lose ourselves in that commitment. And particularly in romantic relationships and marriages and partnerships, the desire to bond, to really connect deeply with somebody can turn us into pleasers. And find that we're losing ourselves in that relationship. Usually is something that makes people start to fight with each other when that happens. And that the part of the lesson is a similar one to the caregiver about taking care of self and other. This is about taking care of my own identity while I'm also very much connected and with you, this other person, or this work, or this whatever it is. Spiritually, the call of the lover is mystic. It's about the yearning to be one with God, with the divine. And in that sense, having some, that is, it's a very beautiful calling to feel so unified with God. And of course, all the great mystics had those experiences all the time. We may have them every once in a while. But the call of the lover is definitely, in the spiritual domain, is for that sense of real unity with God, or by whatever name we use. And that's what I find in this time of being older and in a pandemic. And I actually discovered that I had been traveling to places that I like better than where I live. And what I found is I love my neighborhood, my house, my husband, and just to sitting with how much I love about my life just as it is has been enormously helpful to me. And I know that other parts of that are the ability to connect with memories of loves we have had and things we have loved before without without their pulling us away from where we are now. Next slide. The creator is a, many of these archetypes, by the way, have their divine equivalents. Love is an element of God. The ability to create is an element of God. And that and as I was started with, human survival has come from our ability to keep creating. We were not created to be able to just exist as we were. If you look around, everything around you has been created. Everything around me has been created. My morning coffee was created by people who live very far from me. And they're from agriculture to everything else that happened in that in the ability to create that for me or for us and for anyone. And what that means is that when we have that call for vocation, which can be our work vocation, but at any time of life, it's what do I want to do? There is creativity in it, and we don't necessarily think, probably everybody on this does something creative, but what I've found is so many of my friends are learning to make getting older their creative project. One dear friend of mine, he's such a great guy, found out that there are foods he used to be able to eat and he couldn't eat anymore. And I think he couldn't have any dairy, and he couldn't have any of this, and he couldn't have any of that. And he said, Carol, it is such a creative enterprise to go to the grocery store. It is so much fun. I go and figure out, what can I eat that will taste good? And you have to know he was living at that time, he's not now, but he was living in a small boat in the harbor with a hot plate. And it was still his idea of a great time to figure out how he could be creative in this situation. And virtually everyone I know right now that's my age or older is also finding it helpful to think about how to live in a pandemic, how to live in the age we're in a pandemic and make it work, and to find joy in that activity. I just think that's so cool. Anyway, the downside, by the way, for that archetype is perfectionism. Nothing is ever good enough. And also, people who very often don't find a creative outlet for their creator make up stuff. I bet everybody here has known someone who has constant drama. And every little thing that's going on in their family or whatever becomes a major dramatic production. That's the downside of the creator. The upside of the creator is, as a spiritual gift, is to recognize that we share this. It's like the Sistine Chapel of Adam reaching up to God. We share this gift with our creator. And that the more that we connect to our spiritual selves, the more that we can create, and that we can also open to grace and to the muse of inspiration as part of the experience of what and how we create our lives. in our relationships and our world. Next slide. The revolutionary. This now, in my first book on this subject, I call it the destroyer. And but I realized that no people want to be called destroyers. But I had taken a walk with a very wise friend of mine, and she said, I want you to notice how there's always as many things decomposing as that are growing, and how that is in nature. And in my particular life, I have a lot of creator, and what that means is I'm called to creative things. So I keep creating too many projects and too many things until I'm totally overwhelmed. But what I don't do is let go of any of them. And as we rename this the revolutionary, which is the connection with what does this look like in a person? My revolutionary would be letting go of this stuff, letting go of this, letting go of that, letting go of everything that's in the way of what I really need to be doing right now. Need in terms of spiritually, as well as need in terms of functionally. If we look at agriculture, it's weeding the garden. And it's also harvesting the garden. It's taking those nice things off those plants so that we can cook them and make our food. It is hard for a lot of us to face change in the world, and much of, as the world is always changing, as we know, the revolutionary is the part of us who can let go of things as we need to, accept things and let go of them. And that connects to it as a spiritual gift. The spiritual gift is to let go. Sometimes to let go of what we want, to sacrifice what we want for what is right, or for what we are gaining information that we need to be doing, what is right for us to be doing now at this time. It's kind of built into this pandemic that we're being asked to let go of many things so that people aren't dying all around us. And other people are being asked to let go of things they might like to do so that we as older people don't die before our time. The negative side of the revolutionary, however, is slash and burn. You can take a long time to build a house, and you can burn it down really fast. And so that what do we let go of? What do we say, no, that is not good? A lot of the times we need to also be very clear in our minds about the damage we can be doing as well. And in relationships, for example, sometimes we need to get out of them, but we don't need to hurt everybody inside in the process unnecessarily. So right there, this time for another stretch break. Are you game for that? Actually, I can't make you stretch, but we're going to do a stretch break. Okay. All right. So a little stretch, a little stretch. All right. And then thinking about, that really felt good. I needed that stretch. Thinking about the seeker. Where was I? Seeker. What I'd like you to do is just get in touch with some yearning, some kind of wish or yearning that you're experiencing of, I wish I could. For me, it's being in the Rocky Mountains. But what I really would like, or what I'd like to be, or would like to know, or but travel is really good. Some place I like to be, or if I could only be there, then I'd be more me. Or if I could only have this, I'd be more me. And then just do the gesture, reaching out for that, reaching out for that. And then pulling your hands in to realize I can have this here. If the yearning is for me to be more me, I can be more me now. I can be more here. I can be whatever it is I think I would be different. How can I be that here? And then with another stretch or two, you might give it, we're going to do lovers, so give yourself a big hug. A big fat hug. And then since we're not together and you're probably here on the Zoom call and you're not together with anybody else, you know, hug yourself and send yourself the hug that you want to give them. Just this hug, the hug for the world. And as you do that, just move for any gesture that lets you feel all the love that's in your life, all the love that's in your life, from others to you, from you to them, for you to even an outfit, definitely a pet, a place, being in that. Oh yeah, I'm committed to that. I love that. I love him. I love her. Yes, yes. With Creator, that's the time to get, what kind of creative vision would you like to do? I mean, or do you do? Is it gardening? Is it playing the piano? Is it sewing? Is it painting? Is it figuring out how to have a day that's different than any other day that you've had? Is it, one of my friends is creating, is thinking about her mortality and is just making these beautiful cards for all of her loved ones for them to get after she passes. And she's not even sick, but it's very creative and beautiful that she's doing it. So just take a moment for whatever that moment would be for you. And then okay, so we are ready for revolutionary. Aha, revolutionary. Okay, what do you need? All right, this is good to really do a vigorous stretch for. What do you need to let go of, not have? All the junk in my basement. All right. All the things that you want to get rid of, relationships you want to get rid of, habits you want to get rid of, any ways of thinking or being you want to get rid of, you might want to clear out of your aura. Okay, ready for the last four? And then we'll do groups? All right. All right, sage archetype. We're going to do sage and then magician together because they're both about truth and finding truth. The sage is more about opening to knowledge, opening to to information. It's about, as this sweet little picture shows, it's book learning, it's science. It's learning from the wisdom of the ages, it's learning from science, it's learning from, it's developing within in whatever your work has been and is, expertise. It is finding what's true as much practically true. It works. Somebody knows it works. I know it works. I've tried it. It's also paying attention to what comes at us in terms of what that comes at us is true and how we can figure that out. And factually true. I don't mean true in another dimension. Factually true. Its calling is yearning to know stuff. And you know, if you think about the ancient times that I've been talking about, the key thing that continually drove evolution of human beings is that keen desire to understand, driven by a desire to survive their environment and what was true about it and what needed to happen as a result of that truth, and what they needed to do, and that they were incredibly careful about venerating the people who knew things and making sure that they passed them on to the next generation, so knowledge was not lost. So that the part of you that probably signed up for this has a little bit to do with sage. It's about learning. Because Jung was a magician and a scientist. And he had data to prove what he was doing. And I've done that too, to be sure that this is not just made up. And how really important that is in our lives. But particularly in a time right now that information is so available, there's overload. And it's hard very often to sort it out, but we have to do it the best that we can. As we grow older, if we're retired, it's a great time to keep learning stuff we never knew before. Just a great way to do our mental traveling and keep expanding who we are. Downside can be that the sage is very much about what we can prove to be true. And so a downside sage could say, well, there's no proof in a lab that could say God could exist, so I won't believe in it. Or even people who are saying things like, well, love isn't real. It's just a survival, you know, we just have these urges and they're related to our survival. So there's cynicism in it. But that's, you know, the downside and the negative one. The spiritual gift is a triumph. It is a triumph over truth, over belief. But it's somewhat different than the innocent, because with a sage, doubting isn't a bad thing. Doubting what we believe isn't a bad thing. It leads us to go deeper. It leads us to be resilient. You know, as we face those, as we face doubts and questions, very often we actually become wiser as we resolve them by getting to a deeper level of understanding, which is very, very important. What do I want to say about that? No, I guess I don't want to say that. All right, let's turn next to the magician. The magician is a butterfly for transformation. Magician is about transformation. And this is wins, and often the wisdom from the magician is spiritual, and it is related to meaning, finding meaning in the lives that we have. In the ancient world, it was the shaman who did rituals and healing, um, and who helped people find meaning through their lives. And the part of that meaning was through ritual, through having rituals together that called forth the meaning, and also invoked help from the gods. Um, today, today the magician comes in many forms. A lot of it is, and it's in the world of the invisible. It's the truth of the invisible world, of the world that we not matter, and it is there in spirituality, in religion, and rituals that help us see transitions in life as meaningful transformations into a different time. It can be our own ritualistic practices that we are that give meaning to our days. And I find too that for many of us, and certainly for me, sometimes when what happens in my life is there's more habit than ritual. That to give thought to how do I want to start my day? What do I want to practice? Do I want to pray and meditate in the morning, or do you just want to take a walk? What would be meaningful in this time? It is also the magic is also there in ways that can be secular way. It is the way that changing our thoughts can change our reality. And we now have neuroscience to show how that happens. But if we change the way we think and upgrade our thinking, it is our life can be different, and it's different in part because we are different, and that we act different based on the thinking that we have. But the magician is also there in grace, in the experience of grace, experience of being able to want to change and get help in being changed and being transferred. This happens, of course, in conversion experiences, but it can just happen at home and invoking help in prayer or meditation, or just so many of the spiritual friends of mine, and sometimes myself, it's not even that formal as prayer and meditation. It's just opening up to, hey, what now? And opening up to divine inspiration and to the truth that's coming from somewhere else. This, as we get older too, and we're stuck at home in a pandemic, it's also a call sometimes to think about our mortality, and whatever one's belief about the afterlife might be. There's Robert Johnson, who's a Jungian analyst. I gave a wonderful talk one time that I attended, where he talked about that he was connected to the other world through his spiritual practices and his Jungian practices. And that as he was growing older, he said, I have no fear of what's next, because part of me is already there. And I feel it. And I used to feel aching loneliness. And now I feel blissful solitariness. And I think that's just such a beautiful way to think about this challenge that we have to prepare for mortality, not just for what we leave our children, but on letting more and more of ourselves be on the other side as we grow older. Now I'm going to turn to the ruler, and this will be the last two. Um, the ruler is the king or queen. Um, it is in evolution, you always had a chief, but in any household, you always had a mom or dad who kind of got everybody, set down the rules and decided what everybody was going to do and got things organized, and that's still true now. We have our leaders, and at every level, we have people who get it organized. And, but the ruler is also about grabbing hold of our authority, that we are the ruler of our lives as people, that we don't have to do what everybody else says. We can make our own rules. Now, and I'm not suggesting that we forget our commitments to our spiritual path or to other commitments, but they're ours. We take authority for having made that commitment. And we are in charge of our lives. And if when life gets chaotic, the ruler does not like chaos. The ruler says, how can I order this into something? A lot of times it's, okay, I'm getting organized. I'll make a list. I'll make a plan. I'll etc. But we have different kinds of ways of doing that. But it is what Harry Truman said, the buck stops here with me. The downside is that can get over controlling. And I actually have a fair amount of, revolutionary archetype. And so that when I get very much into my ruler self, my revolutionary rebels. So much for that plan. But it was the ruler. I did not initially have a lot of ruler archetype in my life, other than in my creative work I did. But when I was suddenly being a provost and a president of an institution, I was at a meeting one time, and I heard myself, and I realized, oh, the ruler just manifested in me. This archetype that wasn't there, it was there. And it taught me a little bit about how sometimes these archetypes emerge when we need them. And just when we need them. In the spiritual life, the ruler archetype is about following the practices and the rules and the and the rules and the laws that we've committed to, whatever those might be, and actually ordering our life in some ways through that. But it's also an archetype of responsibility, of taking, like a really good king or queen governs for the people, not for themselves. I mean, there's all kinds of myths about that, otherwise you get Robin Hood and, all that kind of stuff. So, and parents in that kind of ruler role are like that too. They're there for the family and for the good of that family. And that requires sacrifice. It requires sacrifice to do your responsibilities even when it's not what you want to do. And in that sense, done in that kind of way, it's a very important archetype. It can be done in a way that's part of a spiritual path. That this is my kingdom. This is the kingdom that has been delegated to me. This is the kingdom I have. And my job is to love it and to care for it and to keep it in order and working. And Father Garrick, I bet you know a whole bunch about that. And as I said, the downside can be over-controlling. But the downside can also be egotism and forgetting, like I'm the ruler, I'm so cool, as opposed, and I should get all of this, but it's It's about ego or greed, and not the responsibility of a ruler. At least as mythic stories hold true. And the last one, the very last one today we are doing is the jester. Well, unlike the ruler, the jester is kind of the opposite of the ruler. The jester is all about fun, love, happiness, being happy, finding a way to have fun, finding a way to enjoy life, often wanting to help other people enjoy life too. You know, and in ancient times, they danced together, they played together just as we do here. We don't dance as much, but we play. It's about entertainment. It's about all the things that take us out of responsibility and make us joyful. Animals play too. Jester is, I think I'm going to skip over. I mean, the downside of the jester, the upside is its recreation. It helps our brains having fun, stopping, enjoying ourselves, helps our brain function. It helps our health. It's so good for us. But the downside can be irresponsibility, just the opposite of the ruler. Lots of spontaneity, but, you know, being sure to pay the mortgage, not drink too much or anything, you know, to get that balance is really important for the jester. And the spiritual life, you can think about many Christian mystics or the Dalai Lama that evidence joy, just joy. The experience of not happiness that comes from everything going one's way, but an inner sense of joy, which is part of the fruits of the Spirit, a sign of spiritual growth, is to have that sense of inner contented joy always there, which is a great, great gift. You could see it in many of the different traditions in the world as well. So in our pandemic and in the age we are, I think a lot of the, you know, for one thing, many of us spent our lives being told that we could play when we were retired. I remember for me, I couldn't remember how at some point. And then I realized that what I yearned for was not just playing, it was joy. It was that experience of spiritual joy. So let's take do you want to take another stretch break or go right to your groups? I'm going to ask, I can't see everybody right now, so I'm going to ask Father Garrick, what does he think? Now I can see everybody. Now I can see. What do you think, Father Garrick?
I think people might be ready to go to their groups.
Okay. Let me see head nods. Yes? Yes? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. You know what I was doing, by the way, anyway, with the gestures, so you could always do it. And you could make it up yourself based on what I've already told you. All right. So let's go back. We can look at the next slide because it tells you everything that we're about to do. Joy? Yeah.
Alrighty. I had to
yeah.
I had to close it to start the breakout room thing. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, there we are. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to just take 4 or 5 minutes to reflect on these questions, and then you'll move into your group. Task is provide examples of where you see the archetypes in you, in others, or in the world around you, expressed in positive or not so positive ways. And the goal of this is a fairly relaxed thing. The goal is to increase your own and your group's awareness of archetypes as aids to each person's current life journey and better understand other people's attitudes and behaviors. Joy, did you put them in groups of 3 or 4?
Some are 3 and a couple of them are 4, but mostly groups of 3.
Okay. So we're going to have, it'll take a little bit to get you, for you to reflect and get into the groups. But once you've gotten into the groups, we're thinking about 15 minutes to just share. And everybody should get a chance to share first before you have a dialogue. But this isn't one of those things where everybody gets a third or a fourth of the time, because what I'm looking for is each of you sharing what comes to you, and then a little bit of a conversation, because it's about where you're seeing all of this in the world and in yourself as a way of helping the other people expand each person's understanding of this material. Sound good?
So would you like them to wait 5 minutes before going into the groups?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a time to write. You can do the stretch exercise if you want. You can go to the bathroom if you want. But use the time the way that you want to use that time, and then you'll be getting in your groups, and then we'll come back for a little time for Q&A at the end. Okay then. I guess one of the things I want to highlight is with my
Okay, I'm on mute.
Am I muted?
Oops.
No, you're just fine.
Okay, I just need to move forward. Okay. One of the things I wanted to highlight in talking about the ancients is just humankind is still evolving, and especially spiritually. You think about Jesus or any of the Buddha, or sort of saying, this is what you can become. And here we are. And so many people think about the elder years as we're just kind of winding down. But no, it's a big time for evolution, for spiritual growth, and just psychological growth. What I'd like to do right now, I know we have a lot of really smart people and deep people in here, is you can raise your hand and Joy will call on you with the teacher, and you can ask a question, but you could also just share something that really struck you out of your group. And the briefer you can be, the more people will get to speak. Yeah.
Chuck, you're first.
I was interested. Let's see, I was interested that you make very little reference to gender, male, female, and it seems like gender is so wrapped up in all of these. But I was guessing that you really don't want to get them gender stereotyped, so that male and female can be any of these, all of these. So that, but is it helpful to avoid gender, or can talking about gender help us understand ourselves?
Oh, Jung thought that balancing the feminine and masculine was part of the task of our age now, inside of ourselves. But it's also true that different archetypes have been assigned to different genders for millennia, which means that whether it's truly the masculine or feminine or not, that will influence us.
Carol, your sound has gone very low.
Huh.
I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that, but
You are a little quiet, Carol. Yeah.
You want me to say that again, or did you hear it, only you had to stretch?
could you say it again, please?
Yes. What I said was, in Jungian psychology, part of the task of our life this age is to balance the masculine and feminine within. And for me, it's hard to know for sure what's masculine and what's feminine, because different archetypes have been assigned to women and to men for millennia. So it's hard to know what is truly masculine or truly feminine. I think they're all in all of us, but they certainly have different styles. And for most of us today, we're still very much influenced by tradition about what men and women are supposed to do. Yeah. Thank you for that good question.
Father Garrick, you're next.
One thing that came out of our group, Carol, was do you have a sense of what archetype or archetypes need to be accessed to move us forward from where we are now in the pandemic? Or is that a fair question? Or maybe all of them. But are there some specific archetypes that might be particularly helpful at this time?
Well, I think stepping back from the warrior, less warrior, less focus on fighting each other, and then more on truth. I mean, the magician and the sage. What is true right now, and what needs to be handled, and can we pragmatically find solutions for the major problems before us? And that probably also brings us back to bringing the caregiver and the warrior. The warrior's kind of can-do spirit, and the caregivers, let's do something about this before more people get hurt. Impulses that we have. Those are and in citizenry, it's the ruler of taking responsibility, that it's not just what our president does, it's what we do, you know, to take the responsibility of citizenship for addressing the problems that we see to the degree we can. I don't know, did you have other ones that came out?
One that came out of our group was idealist and sage.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
I see that. Yeah, excellent.
Victoria, you're next.
Yes, that was a wonderful exposition of the archetypes this morning. Thank you. Oh, well, it's morning for me in California. I was taking notes, and I did not, somehow I missed negative qualities of the magician. I don't know if I somehow lost.
You did. I got up and I went, oops, forgot.
Oh.
No, the magician, well, you know, if you're opening up to information that comes to you from the invisible world, most religions have cautions about being careful about that. Because, you know, people can think God just told them that I should go murder people, you know, for most of us, we can convince ourselves that something we might want to do that is enormously selfish is really what we're supposed to do as good spiritual people. Yes, so lead us not into temptation. Comes right there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Deborah, you're next.
Hi, Carol. Thank you very much for this. A question, since all of us are here as people stepping into elderhood, is there an archetype? I think of the elder archetype as kind of a key archetype, and I wonder if you see a single elder archetype or whether you see a maturation of the energies of the archetypes you've described as we move into elderhood, probably a little of both. But I was wondering if you have anything to comment on about the archetype of the elder.
Well, traditionally it is the wise old man, the wise old woman, you know, gathering together, which we could see as maybe some magicians, some sage, and then some just life experience pulled together. You know, that has traditionally been what it is. And I think in terms of these 12, it is a call to wholeness. There's a time to call to wholeness, which can be looking at, what have I never been? And if you think about being the wise old woman, the wise old man, it's because you experienced. I mean, that's not just book learning. So it's from experience, and that means if you've shut yourself off from some of these archetypes entirely, you can go investigate them. Happily, maybe you shut yourself off from Jester and you just get to have a good time until you learn about that.
Thank you.
Mary Ellen, you're next.
Thank you. I noted your comment that when you were provost, some archetypes came out that just you recognized immediately, oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
What kinds of things, it sounds like we all have different degrees of each. Mm-hmm. In different situations or as we mature, what kinds of factors are likely to cause something new to bring forth, or and how do we recognize it? To me, I would be stumped, confused, frustrated. It would take a little while to figure out what's going on. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, in the workshop, we're going to go into that quite a bit. But yes, there's a tendency of archetypes to emerge when you need them. But the difficulty is that if we've made a decision that we don't like a whole archetype, maybe because we had a bad experience with it before, we could be blocked from it coming up because of that decision we've made. So then we have to go back and practically do psychotherapy on ourselves to remember when I was 10, I decided that I would never be a bully like my dad, and that's why I have trouble taking control when I'm a manager. There's a whole section in my new book coming out in December that has a list of situations and archetypes that might need to be called upon, but it's not going to be out till December.
Is there anybody else?
Well, thank you so very, very much, and many blessings on all of you. May you live all the archetypes at the highest form that makes you happy and fulfilled and spiritually mature. God bless.
Thank you, and we'll look forward, some of us look forward to seeing you at 10 o'clock our time in the morning, okay? And we'll continue to delve a little deeper into the archetypes.
Is